Hey everybody, how's it going? This is Seth Williams. You're watching and listening to the RE Tipster podcast. And today's kind of a cool opportunity. So I get to talk with these two gentlemen, Caleb and Kyle. And this all started a few months ago when I met Caleb for the first time. And Caleb is somebody who I had sort of seen around. We both go to the same church. That's actually where we're filming this right now. And I'd seen Caleb around for years, really, but I didn't really know him. And we had a mutual friend who introduced us. It's actually our pastor. He knew that Caleb was in real estate and that I was too. And he's like, hey, you two should probably talk. So Caleb reached out to me on Bigger Pockets of all places, and we got together and had lunch. And in that process, I learned a lot about his story, and it was really cool to hear what Caleb has accomplished with his partner here, Kyle. They've both been working together on this. I'm not going to give away too much of the story until we start talking, but what I really liked about it is that they both sort of started from a place that a lot of people are at. It's not like they did some crazy thing and took these just ridiculous risks or anything. They just were smart about it and put in a ton of work and made it happen. So anyway, we'll jump into the conversation here and find out more. And I think you're going to see, if you're somebody who wants to move on from your job and be truly financially free and do your own thing, there's a lot of little lessons that we can pick up from this. So welcome, guys.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, you bet. So, Caleb, I guess we'll start with you, and I'll just ask you both this question. So, when did you figure out real estate was something you wanted to do? How did you decide to go in the direction that you ended up going?
Yeah, so I was working at W-2 after I graduated college. I started working in the fruit industry, actually, in the apple packing facility where we packed for grocery retailers. I did that for 8 years. And just didn't feel fully satisfied in my job and wanted something else. And I was actually talking with this guy. We went on vacation together and kind of put a bug in my ear. Started reading some books, listening to podcasts, and then read, I think, probably a lot of people, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which really changed my perspective of just money and making money work for you. So at that point, he actually challenged me with a 90-day goal to buy a place. And I ended up buying my first property, and it was the end of 2019.
Okay.
And then we partnered up in 2020, and so it's been about a year been together, and it was really just a want for something more and something to basically call my own, work for ourselves, and provide something for our family, and
And you guys knew each other from college? Was that how you first met?
Yeah, we were college teammates, so we both went to Alma College, both played basketball there, and so that's where we knew each other, roomed together then, and probably should have purchased that house if we'd have been a little wiser instead of renting. But
cool. And then, Kyle, what's your story?
Yeah, so I started in September of 2011 was the first purchase, and I started a little bit differently where I heard my parents talk about it often. Just they had invested in mobile homes specifically, even when I was young. They were completely out of it by the time, say, I would have been like a teenager. But I heard a gentleman one time bring it up in the lumberyard. He said, man, I'm going to sell a house for $20,000. And he wasn't even talking to me. And I still remember going home that night and thinking, man, it's going to take me like 6 years to save that amount of money to buy that house. And so then I started reading and I started asking more questions. And it took me a full year. A year later, same lumberyard after I went to college for a year. Came back, and a different gentleman was selling a house for, I think, $29,000 at that time, and it was a duplex, and so it piqued my interest early on, especially having grown up around it and growing up around the conversation. And from there, just got the itch and really realized how much you could do with this and how much freedom you could achieve.
Yeah, awesome. And this was 2011?
Yeah, that would have been the first purchase. Yeah, September of 2011. I think that was the year. For my sophomore year in college, I think was the first.
Gotcha.
I think.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, you've sort of, similar to myself and a lot of people who were in it back in 2011, like you've seen property prices just change a lot and competition change a lot. Where are all your properties? Like, where did you?
So they're all in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Okay. So it's the other half of Michigan, and so it's they're all near Marquette, which is the major city up there, and so they're all centrally located. They were all within striking distance of me being able to do all the work between myself and now Caleb and I. So that's what made a lot of this possible. Is we could get to a property, we didn't have to travel far distance. We could really change the culture of these places. So they're all right there, local.
Gotcha. Yeah, I don't know anybody until I met you guys who does anything in the Upper Peninsula. It makes a lot of sense, especially right now when big cities, just prices are going nuts. have you found like our prices more reasonable in a place like Marquette, or are they still going nuts in that city as well?
I would say they're definitely climbing, and there's a lot of major old metropolitan cities. It's tough to find even a 1% property, right? I mean, even here in where we live in Grand Rapids, it's tough. There's still deals out there for sure, and you can make money, but it just hasn't caught up there. I mean, in the directly Marquette area, there's it's a little higher price, but overall, there's definitely still properties to find to make good cash flow on them, especially if you're willing to buy one that's a value-added fixer-upper, and put some time and some sweat equity in it.
Yeah.
There's a big possibility for some good returns.
Yeah. And I'm curious with this property that you bought in 2019 on this 90-day challenge. So even in 2019, like prices were up there, Was it hard to make this happen in 90 days? Like, where did you find this deal?
Man, so I actually found it on the MLS through a realtor. It was a duplex. And I basically made my mind up that one way or another, sink or swim, I was going to buy a property. And I had to jump in at some point. They always say, the hardest one to buy is your first one.
For sure.
And so I actually put the offer in sight unseen. I put a few offers in prior to that didn't get accepted, but did due diligence and ended up going through with it. It's been an awesome property since. And to be honest, I wasn't even nervous. I remember calling my wife and saying, "Well, I just put an offer on a place.
Yeah.
Are we moving there?" She says. I said, "No, we're not moving there." But
the whole eviction moratorium, has that affected you guys at all? Like, has it been a thorn in your side, or has it been not a problem at all?
It hasn't changed things too much for us, and partially because we had quite a few tenants that were cooperative and were able to make it. So I think that's the most important part. We had a good group. I think it's a little bit different because we are hands-on, that people realize that we are not a large corporation, at least at this point. And so there's probably a little bit of a difference comparative to some of your larger companies that are having a difficult time collecting. We may have had one or two tenants that weren't able to make it and they fortunately chose to move out at that point instead of pushing the issue. So we really have not struggled at all with the eviction moratorium.
And we understood that some people were going to have a hard time, and so we were 100% willing to work with them. We set up a few payment plans for a few people, but overall, it wasn't as bad as what some landlords, I think, had it or made out to be.
How many total properties or doors or units do you guys own right now?
So right now we have right around 103 units. That's not counting the vacant lots in the mobile home park. That'd be ones with tenants filled in them.
So that's 2 apartment buildings and 1 mobile home park?
So yeah, together we own 2 apartment buildings and then mobile home park, a 15 unit, a 16 unit, and then 114 pad mobile home park.
Gotcha. And then you both also own your own individual rentals as well?
Correct.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How many do you have, Kyle?
Yeah, privately we have 24 units, and then what we have together.
Okay. And you just have that one
Just the duplex, yep.
Okay, cool.
Yep. Yeah.
And that's enough to sustain both of you guys full time, right?
Yeah, so it is, and this is probably the coolest part about leaving a W-2 and jumping in on this, is we really traded what would be a probably for both of us pretty good paying W-2s and what we were doing for a construction and property management job, really, and we've done every facet of it at this point. So most people probably could get into it a little bit sooner and have a little bit less risk if they're willing to do those tasks. That they're just difficult tasks. They're not the most fun.
Sure.
So we've traded that part and easily sustainable, at least with that amount of property, as long as you're willing to be the property manager and be the construction guy and the DIY guy, which we have no problem doing right now.
And how much time elapsed from when you guys both decided, hey, let's partner together, to putting in your 2 weeks and quitting your job? Like, was that a quick process or not so much?
That happened quick.
Yeah, it sure did. Yeah, so when to back up a little bit, in 2019 when we kind of talked, I'd give myself like a 5-year window. Like, I want to be in my job in 5 years. And then we ended up partnering up buying the first apartment building. That was in June 18 of 2020 when we bought the first one together. And then fast forward to where we're at now, both left our W-2s less than a year after that. And partly because we knew the potential there. And at some point we were either going to hire it out or we were going to do it ourselves. And so like you said, we kind of traded one job for another. So right now it's I wouldn't call it passive. By any means, we're 100% active in the business and working in and on the business. So we got a good team around us, that help. We had a few people that are on as employees, including our wives that help. And
Kyle, you live up in Marquette.
Yeah.
And Caleb, you live in the Grand Rapids area.
Yep.
So for you, it's what, a 6-hour drive one way to get there?
Correct. It's about a 6-hour drive. Yeah.
So how does that work? How do you guys divide responsibility, and how often are you up there, and how long are you up there? That kind of thing.
Man, so when we decided to do this, we decided that we were both going to leave our W-2s, and I was particularly being the long distance. Me and my wife had a couple of pretty honest conversations, and we were 100% committed to it. And so we actually bought a travel trailer, and we're parked at their place, most
really?
of the summer. Yeah, yep.
Okay.
And so for this summer, for the foreseeable future, we're up there quite a bit, just because we're active in the business right now. But when I'm not there, usually I'm doing phone calls, answering those. My wife does all the QuickBooks, does the accounting portion of it. So there's some remote tasks we can do, some leasing stuff, screening tenants. Yeah, so we're doing it all ourselves in-house. And so we try to somewhat divide that up. His wife handles our social media, does some leasing. We try to divide it best we can, but right now we're both up there full-time.
Wow, man. Do you guys have kids? Remind me.
We do, yeah. Both our kids are actually about within a month of each other.
Wow.
So, yeah, I have a little girl and you have a little boy.
Yeah.
So your kids come up with you in the travel trailer?
They do. They do.
man.
They're going to be best friends. Yeah.
Is that like hard or disruptive, or like is everybody just kind of go with the flow? Maybe it's a personality thing for.
Man, so to be honest, it probably goes back to, we were really good friends before, right? And so we played basketball, they roomed together. Our wives were really good friends. Both of them played college sports too. And so, we've gone on trips together. And so it was a really easy transition.
Yeah,
and
that's nice.
And we knew, there wasn't many other people that we'd want to partner with besides each other.
Yeah.
And so it was really a seamless transition, and they were gracious enough to open up their house and their yard, I guess.
Yeah, man. Man, that is like such a gift to have somebody that like you trust that much, that like you just know it's going to work. Like when I think about partnering with people, I'm not saying I'll never do it, but I'm like super slow, especially with the people that are like my good friends, because like I don't want to ruin that relationship if something goes wrong. Does that ever cross your mind, or like you just kind of know we're mature enough to work through this somehow, or I don't know?
Yeah, so we did spend a considerable amount of
Sure.
time prior to partnering. That I think is critical. I think if anybody's going to do it, that's a crucial step before partnering. We don't want to make it sound like this just all of a sudden went from being a friendship into a partnership without any conversation.
Yeah.
We had a lot of tough conversations for probably almost a year leading up to it. In a way, we were kind of accountability partners leading up to it, where we'd call each other every couple weeks, probably every 2 weeks, and ask, hey, what are you doing on your side? What are we doing on our side? And so we made sure that prior to it, we talked through almost everything possible. Even met with an attorney and made sure we talked through some of the worst case scenarios, right? Some of the stuff that you never hope to happen. So I do think that's a critical step before partnering, and we knew that both of us have the characteristic that, hey, we're going to figure this out and make it work.
Yeah. Why don't we transition a little bit into these specific deals? Maybe the first apartment building that you guys bought together. How did you find this deal? Was that hard to find, or where were you looking to find the opportunity?
Yeah, so all the deals actually came off market, and I think just like you alluded to earlier, markets have changed so much and they've become so competitive that I think you have to source your deals off market in order to find something with the opportunity to, say, leave a W-2.
Yeah.
So all three of them, including this first deal, were off market. This particular property, this 15-plex, we looked at about 2.5 years prior, 2019 or probably 2018 end of it. At that time, it was uninhabitable. It was, I think there was maybe like a 20% occupancy. It had electric heat, so anybody that knows cold winter months is electric heat is very expensive.
Yeah, for sure.
So it definitely wasn't something we could even budge on or even thought twice about at that point. The COVID crisis happened, and that was right around the point where March of 2020, we both had a little bit of turbulence. And again, that accountability partnership, we chatted on the phone and I said, hey, let's go after this apartment complex. We had talked long enough at that point. We felt confident enough. Let's try a small deal together. And called the realtor, actually, that had, at that point, had listed it a couple years prior. Cold called him. Gentleman was great. He was extremely receptive of us pursuing this again. He said, hey, I'll call the guy. He didn't sell it. Actually, the deal fell through, and gave us a shot at it. So we waited until the day that you could travel. Caleb and his wife traveled up that day, whatever,
took the day
mid-April.
off work, whenever the government restrictions came off, for the COVID thing. And
Traveled up that day and looked at it, did our due diligence that day, underwrote it, pretty much had the whole thing wrapped up within that weekend, at least knowing that we were going to put a solid offer in and make sure we land this deal. So that's where the first one came from.
Yeah, and was this, did you guys have your own cash? Did you get bank financing, or how'd you finance it?
Yeah, so what we both did, we both had line of credits. Mine was on personal, his was on a portfolio loan he had through his other properties, Kyle's. And we used that. So we both put our money in to close the down payment on the property. And then the bank actually gave us a line of credit to use for the renovations.
Okay.
So we purchased it, used it for the renovations, and then refinanced it 4 or 5 months later, right?
Yeah, you
Wow.
did a complete turnaround in 4 or 5 months.
Yep.
What was the purchase price of that, and then how much money did you have to put into the renovations to make it better?
Yeah, sure. So we did it relatively inexpensive, partly because we did all ourselves. I mean, so we were taking, I used PTO time, weeks off vacation, I think 3-4 weeks that summer to travel up there, you know, so I always joked, I'm going on vacation to work, you know. He took time off. We actually had an awesome supportive family. They came up, helped a little bit, you know, and was there. And so we did it really inexpensive for labor, right? We had no labor charges. We weren't taking a wage at that point. So we put roughly $30,000 roughly into it probably, and we bought the property for $240,000. So all in, we were in for $270 roughly.
For a 15-unit building.
For 15
that's
unit,
pretty
yeah.
good.
There were 6 units that were occupied when we bought it, so we renovated 9 units from June 18 through the beginning of September and got them fully rented out.
Yeah.
Then refinanced for $750,000.
Wow,
And
yeah.
so at that point, pulled our cash back out that we put into it. So at this point, in all the deals that we've done so far with the other apartment and the mobile home park, we have zero of our own cash invested in any of this.
Wow, man, that's amazing. It kind of reminds me of like a typical wholesale house where like there is only one type of buyer for this, and that is an investor who's willing to like get their hands dirty and fix it. Like the retail buyer is not buying this thing. Is that sort of what this was?
It was. And a lot of people face this, especially maybe in your first couple deals where the institution that lended on it probably wouldn't have been likely to lend on it if they didn't know we had a backstory of fixing properties like this. At that point, I think there was 20% or maybe a little more occupancy.
30,
around 20-30% occupancy of that 15-plex, where most institutions wouldn't lend on it. This one said, hey, give it a shot. They were local. It was a credit union, and we hear that so often in the community that if you want something done like that, sometimes your smaller local places are a little bit better to source that funding.
Yeah. And did you know what that second appraisal was going to come out at? Or did you know how much you'd be able to increase the rent? Like, I know in hindsight, it seems like, man, what a great opportunity, what an obvious investment. But like when you don't know on the front end, like, were you confident that like, yes, this is a good price. Yes, $30,000 is a great deal. Yes, it's going to end up at this value. Or was it just like, I don't know, let's just do this and we'll see what happens?
We definitely knew that there was a huge value add, right? Just hearing and educating ourselves well enough, we knew the potential was there, and Bob probably knows the numbers a little bit better on that side.
Yeah, I mean, so we ran numbers really conservatively, and in all our properties we've underwrote and we've done pro formas, and so we're not going in blind at all. And we know the market well, especially Kyle does, living up there. So we really underestimated what we thought we could get when we started renovating these. We rented them for more than we expected to, and we were redoing everything. I mean, we were putting new floors, painting them, all new appliances, countertops, bathrooms were updated. So we were doing up pretty nice. I mean, really, in the area, probably some nicer places. And so we ended up getting, like I said, more than what we even thought we could. And so we actually passed what number we thought we could even refinance it for, Cool. And so when the appraisal came back, we were both pretty excited because we knew it was definitely a nice springboard, into future deals for us.
Yeah.
But we also knew the amount of work that was going into it. It wasn't like these were turnkey at all. I mean, some of them were bare bones, some of them were filled to the brim with stuff,
If you had hired some general contractor to do all this, how much do you think it would have cost?
Yeah, we talk about that often. It would be tough to put a number on it because of how bad a shape they were.
Yeah.
We're also fighting the COVID crisis at the same time.
Yeah, that's true.
So to line up contractors right now, and everybody's dealing with this, it would have been either really overpriced to land the work for it, or it would have taken, we'd have held that property for a year probably to be able to renovate it on their time. So
So it sounds like your ability and willingness to do the work, which like I don't have this ability. Like if you give me a hammer, I'm going to just ruin everything I touch, So it sounds like that skill is a pretty big deal in terms of your ability to do this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say for sure. And I would say it's almost something that I won't say sets us apart, but gives us a little edge, that we're willing to tackle these deals that other people don't want to. We've heard multiple times like, man, you guys overpaid for those buildings. And maybe it's just our knowledge or just hearing what other units across the country or listening to different podcasts, reading books, hear what they go for. But like, man, I think we underpaid for these, like we just knew what the value was, and it's a commercial appraisal. So they're going on the numbers, and we knew we'd get for rent and what we'll bring in monthly. And
Yeah.
We thought, to be honest, even if we totally screwed this up or went, got way less rent than we thought, we would still be okay and still be able to make the payment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's always interesting to hear what a person's unfair advantage is. Like, what is that edge that they have that nobody else does? Like, maybe to the average person who doesn't know how to do this, you did overpay, but like your ability to make these changes, like that's changes everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
So basically, you got this thing refinanced with the higher appraisal, and then you took that money and then you bought property number 2. Is that what happened? Or what'd you do with that money?
That's kind of what we did. Yeah, we refinanced and we only did a 60% loan to value.
Okay.
We didn't want to get over leveraged, just especially being our first deal, but we knew we wanted some capital to be able to buy another deal if one presented itself.
Mm-hmm.
The commercial lender we were working with is kind of how we somewhat got the next deal for the apartment building.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it wasn't that we took that 60% without a deal in mind, just knowing that as well as it went, that we envisioned this was going to continue to grow. We would foster this kind of slowly and see where the next deal was at. The commercial lender brought up, he said, man, as well as you guys did this in this small community, he said, there's another property that's in worse shape, and he meant that sincerely, and it really was. So he said, hey, how about reaching out to this guy? And that again comes from just being willing to be in a niche that nobody else was in. This property, much like the first apartment complex, was really run down. Having the capital available, we just pursued that next deal. We said, let's try it. Let's start the conversation. Let's see where this takes us and see if it makes sense.
I'm curious with the tenants, do you end up having to like boot a lot of these tenants because they can't afford the higher rent, or they choose to move out, or are they like overjoyed that somebody's finally fixing the place? Or and also, like, when you're making the renovations, do you have to wait till the units are vacant, or do you just do it while the people are living there?
So in this situation, just given the condition and the shape of the property, we knew it was going to be really tough to do it with people living in there. I mean, we had water damage. I mean, you name it, it was in there. We had holes in the floor, obviously holes in the wall. We had a leaky roof at one point. I mean, we had just a lot of issues that were going to be really tough to do with tenants in place. And so we were very upfront. We leveled with everyone we bought it that just said, hey, we don't think this is livable, and in the way it's at. And we don't feel comfortable with you guys living here in a property like this and being an owner of property with someone living there. So what we did was gave them a 30-day notice to vacate it. And some people held on a little bit longer, but most people did leave. They knew what kind of shape it was. And at that point, then we started working on renovations. And we just did 8 units first, and then we're jumping into the next 8 units after that. And so we're going to clear both buildings and fully renovate both. It's really the best way to do it, and the only way we think that's possible to do a good job.
Yeah. What is the housing supply like in Marquette? Like, is it a type of situation where it's like, if there's vacant units on the market, they're going to rent like that? Or are they going to sit vacant for a while? Or what's that like up there?
So probably like a lot of markets right now, it is extremely difficult for people to find housing. And much like Grand Rapids, we don't post, we haven't had to post the property in quite a while. So we take maybe, I would say, probably 3 to 5 phone calls a day and direct them over to the website just to apply. So there's that type of demand, unfortunately, and especially in affordable housing. So Marquette being a college town and also a growing area of the Upper Peninsula, it's definitely put some significant demand on affordable housing up there.
Yeah. So I guess that makes me think of another thing. So are you guys managing these yourself? Like, you don't have another property manager between you, right? It's just you are talking directly to the tenants?
Yeah, we've opted at this point, just because of the state of the properties, we are going to do all of the property management during this optimization phase until we feel comfortable enough that the culture has changed, the living conditions have changed, and it now is a community that can be run by a property manager, that we can kind of put the systems in place. We talk daily about implementing those systems, and that's where we've went. So much of this property management is pretty seamless. It's pretty hands off at this point from what we have to do on, say, like the tenants that we've already placed. So really much of our time and focus is spent on renovating on the units that are empty right now. But the property management end of it takes, I would say, 5-10% of our daily time.
Yeah. How often do you have to like evict tenants for non-payment? Like, have you been pretty good at finding good tenants who pay and that kind of thing? Or
yeah, we haven't had to go through that, fortunately. And part of it being the eviction moratorium was on for most of this past year. It wasn't, we didn't have that availability to evict. But fortunately, we haven't had to do that. It wasn't an option, and maybe we would have tried to evict if it was in place. There may have been a tenant or two. The tenants we've placed, we've set a very specific criteria now at this point of, here's what you have to make, here's what you really have to fulfill and check these boxes. and have not had a single issue that I could think of in tenants we've placed.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Just to review the timeline, so you bought the first apartment building in what month and year was that?
June of 2020.
Okay, and then you bought the second one when?
That was February something of 2021.
Around February 10th of 2021.
And then did you do the same thing with that, where you renovated it and refinanced it? Same kind of thing, or?
Yeah, we're in the middle of that project, so really that one's still under renovation. That first eightplex, they sit side by side. That first eightplex is almost completely renovated, but it is filled without posting. But in between those two deals, we did land another significant deal, and that would have been in December 1st of 2020, so right before the new year. And that was the mobile home park. That was probably our largest purchase together.
Now let's talk about that. That sounds pretty interesting. So, like, how much land, how many mobile homes were there when you bought it? And are you renting just the lots, or you actually own the mobile homes themselves, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's close to 30-acre parcel.
Okay.
It's a 114 pad mobile home park. When we bought it, it wasn't very occupied. I think it was 26% occupied.
Okay.
So only 33 tenants. There's like maybe 40 trailers there, some vacant. So really, we came into a property that we knew had a lot of upside, but also had a big project for infill. So when we first started discussing this mobile home park, I mean, it was new to us, and so we both dove into reading some podcasts, doing as much as we could to learn about the industry. And I still don't know if we felt 100% comfortable when we did it, but the opportunity was there, and so we took it, and we've already brought in some used homes. We're looking at bringing in some new ones.
So when you say, you said 33% occupancy, does that mean of the land or of the existing homes that were there?
Of the existing lots, 33% of the lots were occupied. So 114 pad park, and it was somewhere in that ballpark. So I think like 33 we had. But then to answer your question about the park versus tenant-owned homes, most of them were tenant-owned homes, which we prefer to kind of do and stick with. But there were 3 park-owned homes that we rented out. Currently 2 buying it when we purchased it, and right now we've added I think 2 or 3 more that we've rented out since then.
So maybe this answers the question, but these used homes that you're looking to buy, or the new ones, is the plan for you to own those and rent the entire homes out, or like sell them to the people? How does that work?
Ideally, we would like it to be tenant-owned homes, and for a couple different reasons. I think the pride of ownership is much more important, or probably much more fulfilled when they own it themselves instead of renting it. And then you can create a community atmosphere. So we've noticed just in the short time that we've been there, the people that live there and are our owners, they just respect and treat everybody a little bit better, their neighbors and the people around them. So we would like to continue in that avenue with people purchasing them.
In the homes that were there when you bought it, were they like kind of ratty, nasty ones, or like were they in decent shape? Like how nice were they?
Yeah, that definitely needs some work. I mean, so there's definitely some that the park was built, I think, in the late 70s. There's probably some homes still in the 80s, that were in their probably original homes. And then there's some nicer ones. There definitely are some probably 2000s, maybe even later than that. We brought in a few that have been some late 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s. So what we don't want to do is bring in worse homes. But at this point, with how tough used mobile homes have been to come by, just finding we've been bringing in really stuff that we know we got to renovate. And then, to be honest, what we're going to do probably is to try to flip these mobile homes, put some work into them, and not so much make a big buck on them, but at least to be able to sell them, what we put into them, to be able to rent that lot out and that space out.
Gotcha. So you bring the home in, renovate it, sell the home itself to the tenant, and then they keep renting the land from you.
Correct, exactly.
Okay.
Yep. So ultimately, the goal is, for us at least, not saying everyone, but for us to just rent the lot itself where everyone owns a home. So your maintenance is very minimal. You don't have as much CapEx besides the infrastructure and roads, and plumbing, that piping, that kind of stuff.
Cool. Like if some of the homes are in terrible shape, like how do you make that work with, like, do you have the horrible looking ones on one end of the park and the nice ones on the other end, or are they all just kind of mixed and intermingled, or I don't know, you can't make a person improve their home, right? How does that work?
You can in a way.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just and tread lightly, right? We want them to have a place to live. We definitely don't want to see people pack up and move out. And there is definitely a better sector of the park. It's a big park, so there is a couple streets that are new homes, and then there's a sector or a small section that are the older homes. So we've even went as far as to offer to help. So especially with the skirting issues with freeze up prevention and that type stuff. And so we're there. We've brought dumpsters in. We've offered to help clean up. We've picked stuff up ourselves. So that part about it, we really are going to try to help those people that may have, what would be an eyesore, try to help them clean it off.
Does that mean like doing it for free? Or what does that mean to help them?
Yeah, so if it improves the overall picture of the park, or if it improves just the overall community, we'll do it on our dollar, right? We'll get in there and put the equity in ourselves, the sweat equity. So because the eventual return, we take phone calls now all the time with people complimenting, hey, I like what you guys are doing. We want to move a home into the park, or hey, we'd like to, pursue purchasing a new one from you guys. And that's all just the effort to clean the place up.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, the dynamics of a mobile home park, it's kind of weird. So, like, is a tenant more permanent just because, like, it's not easy to move a whole home in versus, like, if you're renting an apartment, you just leave, So, like, you don't really want to get a bad apple because they're going to be stuck there, right? I mean, is it... And maybe I'm wrong. I don't really know what I'm talking about. I'm just imagining.
No, you're 100% true. Yeah, I mean, some of these residents and tenants probably have been there, man, probably since the park opened, a lot of them. So maybe not quite that long, but I mean, for a foreseeable future, when someone moves in, you kind of figure they're going to be there for a while, especially if they purchase a home. And they know that, and we know that. So that's why we prefer to do the tenant-owned homes, So they're going to treat it like a house, like something that they own and something that they can have pride in. And I think it goes a long ways, too. That, I mean, like you said, we're in there, we're bringing dumpsters there, we're helping them clean trash up. And there's been a few times we're in there, 7, 8 o'clock at night. Yeah. And I think it motivates the people themselves. I've seen some people come out there mowing their lawn, they're picking trash up with us, and so they see us working hard, and I think they say, hey, if these guys can do it, I can help them, or I can do my own lawn,
That does say something. It's kind of like when you have a coach who doesn't tell you to run laps, but he runs laps with you. It just kind of gives you more built-in respect because you see him doing it.
For sure, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
Your thought is correct, too, on the vacancy part comparative to apartment complexes. We've noticed that part. The tendency to move out after a year, try to move up in an apartment complex is definitely greater. It's expensive. It's $4,000 to $5,000 just to move a mobile home, and that's just to pull it. So that doesn't include any of your hookup costs or what you need to put in sewer and electric and gas. So it's not cheap.
So this is probably a novice question, but if a mobile home owner stops paying the rent for the lot, do you just take possession of their house, or they got to figure out? Because if you don't have money, you got to come up with $5,000 somewhere to move the thing out. How does that work?
Technically, since you're on a lease, how it's rolled up, it's not like an apartment where they don't pay rent. You can evict them right away. You can send anyone else to vacate. What it is with mobile home is it's 3 months in a year period if they don't pay rent. So we don't want to do that. We don't want to kick anyone that's living there, by any means. And we're very upfront with people, and they know where we're coming from, and we've had no issues so far. And really, we don't expect any. I mean, I think they see the work we're putting into it and trying to make improvements. And I think even small rent increases, aren't going to have a big impact. I think they're going to see that we're improving stuff.
So you're saying 3 months in a year, that's the soonest window you have to evict them or get them out of there? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, legally you could. Yeah, we haven't had anybody press that. We haven't had any issue with collection, and I think it is because we've got pretty fair rental prices, and we can try to keep a community that people want to be in.
Yeah. So this entire 33-acre parcel that we said it was?
About 30 acres is what
30
it is.
acres, okay. So, is it all developed from the standpoint of, roads and utilities, or do you have to, add that stuff if you want to expand?
Yeah, no, it was all developed. Had poured concrete pads, had the pedestals there with electric and power, risers with the water coming up, sewer that was there. There was some minor infrastructure issues, and I say minor. We'd have a few water leaks at some point. I think every mobile homeowner does at some point. But also we had some risers that were broken where the water comes out. We've had to replace. I think sewer lines have been blocked. Like anything. I mean, there's problems that come up. It's just a matter of solving them. And
so if a problem comes up, just throw yourself on the floor and just give up. Everything bad happens to me.
Yeah, I think you hear a lot of people say that, right? I mean, that's a real estate message. You're a problem solver, right? And if you can, that's where the the benefit comes from.
Yeah, absolutely.
So does that mean that at one point this was fully occupied? If there's pads everywhere and a bunch of people moved out, or do you know the history?
Yeah, so it was. This mobile home park was fully occupied. It would have been around probably the late 80s, early 90s. And the local area took a hit with the closing of a nuclear base, an Air Force base right in the immediate area.
I got you.
So that was around the mid to early 90s. So it did see significant change. And Whether or not it could have been sustained if the maintenance was upkept, if things were upkept a little bit cleaner, if there were new homes coming in, it's hard to say what that would have looked like.
Yeah.
At least from a market comparison, the rest of the surrounding area of Marquette, the parks are full, and there's even some large investment groups that have purchased in the area. So at this point, we know the model is there, that there's plenty of room for another full mobile home park.
Absolutely, yeah, the demand's there.
Yeah.
100%.
As I'm hearing you talk about Marquette, like in my mind, I sort of thought of Marquette as like, oh, that's just totally different than the rest of the country. It's a small city in the UP. Like, that doesn't. But it sounds pretty similar to a lot of cities where it's like it's still super competitive. There's still a housing shortage. Prices are still going up. So it almost sounds like you could do a very similar thing in any city if you were able to just identify, like, hey, that apartment building is looking terrible. Like, maybe they'll sell it.
Yeah.
Do you think that's accurate? Like, is there a lot of crossover between Marquette and other cities around the country, do you think?
I would say there's no way that a one market stands alone. Like there's plenty of other markets I would say that have deals like this, where there's an apartment that's run down, a mobile home park that's run down. I mean, it's just a matter of finding those. And then if you're willing to take the time and put in the equity or put in the sweat equity to do it and put in the time and the work that it takes, I think there's definitely deals out there, and that's what we're willing to do. And then people know that. I mean, so I think if there's another property like that, someone might say, hey, these guys might do that. I don't want to do this, but these guys might do that.
Is it safe to say that around these two apartment buildings and mobile home park, is it otherwise a good area? It's just that these properties were hurting?
It is, yeah. I would say the rest of the area surrounding is a pretty good area. And I think, like any market, I'm sure there's areas of Grand Rapids, there's areas of every city that people tend to hang together, I think. And so I think by cleaning these up, you disperse these people into different neighborhoods or they go somewhere. It's just better for the local community that they're not all under one roof or all on one street or one city block.
Yeah. So like if I wanted to find something like this in Grand Rapids right now, what would I be looking for? Is it am I basically just like driving around looking for buildings that look on the exterior like they're in rough shape? Like, is that essentially what you did on this one?
Yeah, so both the apartment complexes were off market, and both of them were properties that people knew needed something to be done, whether it was from the exterior or even the interior, or just getting to know the local environment. And so I think the first place you would start is just either cold calling or just having more conversations, networking pretty seriously with people that are hanging around these areas.
Yeah,
and a lot of times it's just going to come from the locals. I would say as long as you've got somebody boots on the ground, probably doesn't even have to be yourself, but somebody boots on the ground in the area that can tell you, hey, this property's been run down. It's sitting 20% occupied or 30% occupied. That's the first one I would go after, or that we would go after together.
Those boots on the ground, is that like a local realtor or something? Or
it could be. I think a lot of times in commercial, at least, a lot of times these guys hear about things a year before they're ever going to even be a potential sale. This gentleman in particular that sold the second one, he was a profitable business owner. He had done a really good job with the construction industry. In the commercial lender, he brought it up probably a year or two before this gentleman was even interested in selling. So I think that's who you would start with, at least in any open market. I would start with these guys that have a potential for a pocket listing, or Joe Schmo's getting up in age and he's probably going to sell in the next couple of years. His kids don't want to take it, and this would be the property to go after.
Yeah, and you had mentioned earlier it was sort of a cold call. Does that mean like you literally found this owner's phone number and picked up the phone and called, or you had just heard from somebody on the street? Or I can't remember what you said.
Yeah, it was a literal cold call. It was grab his cell phone number, give him a call, and just introduce myself and our company and what our mission was as a team. And he was extremely receptive to that. And so it probably took 3 to 6 months of conversation. I won't make it sound like this was a pick up, call the phone, 5-minute conversation. It was a done deal. Likely with the mobile home park and the apartment complexes, it was a lengthy process of just forming a relationship and making sure that they were comfortable selling to us.
Where did you get this guy's phone number?
Good question. So I asked the lender. I asked the commercial lender. It happened to be a gentleman he knew, and I think there's a lot of different statistics out there, but we're only like 1 or 2 people away from the connection to somebody. So. If you want to meet somebody, you got to ask enough people, and they're going to know them.
Yeah, that is true. There's certain people that just, by the nature of their job, like they know lots of people, like lenders and agents. And I'm just thinking, if anybody listening to this or watching this wanted to get started right now, like
Yeah.
who's the first person they should call? Just like look up commercial lender, call them. Hey, tell me where your distressed property's at. Give you the name, call them. Tomorrow night you got a deal that you're closing. The next
Right,
day
yeah.
you're financially free, right?
Yeah, I don't want to give away all of our secrets, but that's where I would go, right? Especially coming out of this COVID crisis. There's a ton of properties, apartments, all sorts of properties, hotels, apartments that are in foreclosure or in forbearance.
Yeah.
That's probably where I would start. I'd start with those lists.
Yeah, and I would say too, I mean, just going through COVID, there's probably some landlords that experienced some tenants not paying rent. And maybe they were debating about selling before, and now they know they want to sell, like after going through this. Like there's no way I want to handle this anymore, especially people that are getting up there in age. There's a huge opportunity there to jump in and, even put on a land contract. They still got that residual income coming in and it can be a benefit to both parties.
Yeah. Yeah, that is one thing. It's like you just never know what the person on the other end is going through. Like they could have cancer, they could be going through a divorce, like they could just be too busy with other stuff.
Yeah.
Like on the surface, it makes no sense why they would be willing to part with the property, but there is a reason. You got to get them at the right time.
And I think sometimes I think certain property owners, after say you own a property 10, 15, 20 years, you're almost just the point where you're just content. You're not making improvements. You're not doing a good job managing it, and the property starts deteriorating. At that point, that's what I think, and that's where these properties are at. It's kind of a second thought, pushed aside, and at that point, they probably didn't need the income because they had other streams of income, or they were just all right financially. And so for them to part ways with it was almost not even a second thought, or actually they're not second thought, but they're a lot more willing to.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to get those deals, right, is to revisit them. If you're not constantly keeping communication, and that's what you were doing, staying in communication with them. And
I know something that I have experienced, and I think a lot of active real estate investors are experiencing, is people sort of see you from the outside. They see that you're doing great things, you're making money. They don't really know how to do it, but they sort of want to get into the action. Have you guys had people like offering you money to do this stuff? Is that a common thing you've come across? Like friends and family, like, hey, you need investors? Take my money.
Yeah. It is a little bit, and that's one of the things that comes with growing as quickly as we have, is that the community definitely recognized it. We've had quite a few people reach out and say, hey, are you interested in having a private investor, or can we inject capital? And I think it's easy to see growth and not understand that there is a ton of work that comes into the backside of this, behind the scenes. So it's definitely something that we welcome, and we always say, hey, it's going to be somebody that fits into our team, and it's going to be a relationship that we have much more than it is going to be like we need the money or we want to take some capital. So we definitely welcome relationships for sure, but it is an extremely selective process for sure.
Yeah. Are there a lot of these like rundown apartment building type properties in Marquette? Like, do you sort of could you take your pick on the next deal you do and the next one? Like, are they all over? Or, I don't know. Is that a common thing?
I don't think so. I really don't think that there's a lot of there's just not a high volume of properties anywhere that are in this kind of current state. I don't want to make it sound like this is like the hidden gem or fantasy island in real estate investing, but it does come with just doing your homework. And likely, if you didn't know that these weren't occupied and you didn't spend time in the local market, the exterior of especially of that 15-plex was okay. Right? It wasn't like it was an eyesore and it sat on a major highway. So I would say there's probably just as many deals anywhere in any market, and it just comes down with doing your homework and having some sort of due diligence or somebody there that can look into it for you.
Do you guys have any good like before and after pictures
we do
of this stuff?
Yeah.
If you guys want to check out the show notes, retipster.com/108. If I can get some of those from them, I'll post them there just so we can get a feel for the transformation. That might be kind of cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can definitely get those over to you.
Yeah.
For sure.
We post them pretty regular on Fixer Uper's Instagram. We've got someone that directs that social media. That's my wife, Autumn. And so that, we do document it pretty well. And that's where a lot of people from the community have reached out through Instagram.
Cool. I'll link to their Instagram page as well. Again, in the show notes, retipster.com/108. Now, this whole thing of quitting your jobs, I know sounds like that was sort of like the long-term goal, but it happened faster than you thought. Was that like a nerve-wracking experience? Like, was it hard for you or your wives to get on board with that? And how did you know it's like, okay, now we're ready? Was there a certain monthly income number you were looking for, or amount in savings, or I don't know, take us through what that was like.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it in a way, it was a leap of faith. At the same time, and we both knew ultimately this was our goal, and so that's what we were going for. But it definitely was some long conversation with my wife, I'm getting her on board and going through the numbers and rightfully so, making sure financially we can afford it. We didn't want to jump into a ship while it was sinking, and by no means. But we also knew that to really do this and do it right without hiring anything out, we had to jump into it full time. So, I spent a lot of time really thinking, praying at it, and knew that was a decision I was at peace with, comfortable with, and felt like it was the right time to do it. And it was really to the point where it wasn't fair to our families, where we were working a W-2 job. I would just come home at night, be answering emails, answering phone calls, going on weekends, to start fixing stuff up. Same with you, So basically, we were working 40, 50 hours on W-2, plus put in another 15, 20 hours, in a real estate, if not more, staying long nights up. And so it just got to the point where it wasn't fair to them to keep going that way. And the reason why we got into this is ultimately because we want the freedom, we want time with our family. We want to be able to grow up with our kids and have that time flexibility and not be limited to our, you get 2 weeks of PTO. We want to coach our kids' sports teams, and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, totally. What about you? Is it?
Yeah, it was probably a little less labor intensive. My wife's not quite as analytical. But Caleb's wife is a math teacher, so that part there wasn't a certain number. We knew we had lived off of what we were making on the rental side of it for quite a while. My wife had left a corporate position like 2.5, 3 years prior, just doing what we were doing. So we knew the model was there, and so it really came down to how much were we willing to sacrifice and how long could we hold on, sacrificing the time at home with family, the time we both have a 1-year-old. So, and we continue to resonate that way. We continue to talk over and kind of held each other accountable between Caleb and I that, hey, are we letting this balance swing a little bit too far? Like, is now the time? So since that purchase of the mobile home park in early December, we ran that mobile home park for 7 months, 7 months, or even 8 months prior to even making the decision or finally leaving our W-2. So there were some long nights for sure. So it was really, it was the tipping point where, okay, we're no longer willing to sacrifice so much time for the family or away from the family.
As I'm sort of reflecting back on the things we've talked about so far, so maybe I can just summarize this and you guys can let me know if I'm missing something, but it sounds like there's a number of things that allowed this to happen the way that it did. One of them was you guys knew each other and you trusted each other. You were both in a financial situation where you could chip in the amount needed to get going. You both have the construction background of knowing how to do that stuff. That's something a lot of people don't have or aren't willing to do. You also knew how to identify and find the deals, right? The market is also such that it's just going up and up and up, and it's, the supply and demand is there. And just try to think, like, would this work in 2011, with the way things work there? Like, would it, do you think? Or would it have just taken a longer time, you think?
Yeah, it's interesting. So we've talked a lot about this. I think we could have grew it a little bit faster, sooner, and one of the things we say and that Caleb and I both talk about is if you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you kind of go together. So if we would have partnered earlier or had the capital available, like we talked, we probably could have grew this much faster in 2011 than we could now because the prices, the competition is there, and the market's tightened up a little further. So much like when you got into it, right, the opportunity, the iron was hot for sure at that point. And, so
totally.
Now it's been a little slower process, I would say.
It sounds like maybe it's a slightly different story, but it sounds like your spouses are both like, they're cool with it. They might not have been like, yes, let's do it. But they weren't like, no, I won't allow you to do it. For a lot of people, depending on their situation, if they're married or who their significant other is, like that can be a big factor in this. Like some people will say, no, I forbid you to do this. And others like are the biggest cheerleader and like make it happen sooner than it would otherwise have. And my wife is similar to yours, Caleb, where she's super analytical and like it had to be a really sure thing before she was like totally on board. So would you agree? Like, do you think that's an important thing in this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of it comes down to is trust. I think it's having a relationship where you guys trust it 100%. And for Danae, if I was like, well, if you think it's right for our family, this is what we can do. And so ultimately, and same with us. We have trust between each other. There's not 1 second I would doubt the decision he'd make, and probably vice versa. Even our wives, my wives are both actively involved in the business, and so it's been an awesome opportunity. To work with your spouse, work with one of your best friends, and grow that. But at the same time, without Danae, my wife, I would run and buy anything, And so she reins me in good, which is what you need. You need someone to compliment you, right? You have some strengths, and then you have a lot of weaknesses. At least I do, and so she compliments those really nice, and same with Kyle does too.
Yeah. makes me wonder, like, how do you find people in life that you trust that implicitly, where it's like, I trust that you're going to make the right decision? Maybe it goes both ways. Like, maybe it's my problem that I don't trust people that much, but I don't know, I've met enough people in my life where it's like, at first glance, they seem super trustworthy, but when you follow them along, long enough, they do things that are like, oh, maybe I don't trust you there. So to be able to find somebody that, like, you can really be on that level with is an amazing gift. But I wonder, like, is there some kind of, like, personality test you can run a person through to know, okay, yep, I can trust you now? Like, you can't, like, manufacture that trust. Like, you just have to know a person for years, really. I mean, that was your situation, right?
That was, yeah.
Yeah, I would say that, and like we had talked, it definitely wasn't something that just transpired overnight.
Yeah.
And I think you end up knowing somebody's true character over the course of time, much like any relationship, and before jumping in with a spouse. And people do make it work if they jump in quickly, but probably is better with fostering a little bit of time. And so I think we just knew that one another came from the same background. We came from a work ethic background. We came from a very faith-driven background. Like, there was definitely parts that we knew weren't going to waver as hard or as much of a challenge as we were going to face. And that part was critical. So we would always have our core values. We'd always stick to that part. And we agreed there first and said, hey, whatever this looks like, however difficult it gets, we'll be able to press on.
Yeah, gotcha. Now, it seems like you guys are sort of good at a lot of the same things. Are there areas of expertise that you have, Kyle, that Caleb doesn't have, and vice versa? Like, are there jobs that come up where it's like, oh, that's Kyle all the way. That's not Caleb's job, or vice versa?
Yeah. So I would say the biggest thing and probably the most beneficial thing I ever did was partner, because Caleb's got an amazing ability to manage a lot of people. And when we're property managing 100 and some tenants at this point, he has the ability to communicate very effectively and have a little bit more, I would say, of the aggressiveness that you need to get people to do things. He comes from a background of managing way more employees than I was managing as a clinic director, and so isn't afraid of a little bit of confrontation, where I would say I tend to have a significant weakness there and probably let things slide a little bit too far. So that's, he's been a blessing to the company and to grow it that way, and probably wouldn't have been possible to get to where we're at without having that somebody to complement my weakness personally.
And that's the whole thing. You want to find some of the confidence, right? I mean, yeah, with construction-wise, we both, hardworking, yeah, but the Kyle situation, he's like the epitome almost of a visionary, right? Where he's always looking in the future and wants, what are we going to do in 5 years? Where are we going to be? Where are we going to be in 10 years? And where are we growing this thing? How many units are we going to be at? And so he's really driving that business forward. He's a super likable guy. You don't meet many people that don't get along with them, and can't fit in with them. And so, it just, you got to find something that complements, you, and whether it's a relationship with your spouse or business partner, and that's the key to go a long ways, like you said earlier.
So speaking of the future vision, like, where are you guys going to go? Like, what do you see happen in the next year? It sounds like a ton has happened within like 24 months here, right? Like, imagine what could happen 5 years from now. Where do you think it's going to go?
Yeah, we definitely, so we use EOS, the operating system that way, and we have talked over our 10-year and 5-year goals. But probably most importantly is that we just don't want to grow this for the sake of growing it. I think a book like Profit First is a great example, and that too many businesses probably try that too quickly, right? See how large we can get. We're going to try to stick to our core values of having our family and our faith be first, and that's a critical part. So whatever happens from there, we can grow it as is, but we want to keep that as our cornerstone. So I think if I had to give you a 10-year goal, right, we know very realistically we would like to exceed 1,000 units together. And the units has zero relevance to how much we can make on a gross revenue, and has much more to do with how many people can we impact now at this point. We got 2 great W-2 employees. We have already grown our team to 6 of us, really 6 full-time employees.
Wow.
And I would say they are probably 2 of the best team members you can have. We would like to feel like we're helping people in the community, and hopefully with being able to get to that 1,000-unit mark or exceed that in a 10-year vision, and we could then start a nonprofit. We could then give back a little bit more to the community, and so that's where we're headed as a team, and kind of our direction together.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that's basically 10 times the number of units you have now, right?
It is.
Would that be like in the same market? Are you looking at other states, or where do you think that would go?
Yeah, we thought it was quite a bit, and we're not dead set on, we're going to buy a mobile home next, we buy an apartment next. I think if there's a value add component there, I think we're willing to jump on it. And even out of state. Right now we kind of found our niche in the market we're in, and we'll definitely pursue that until I think it runs dry, or we need to move on to somewhere else. But we definitely do want to expand different markets and be able to impact other markets too, and create an affordable housing. One thing we're not trying to do here is is a price gouge money, or rents or just increase rents every single year. We want to keep attainable, affordable housing for people. It's also a nice quality place for them. That's ultimately our goal. And so if we can move that to a different market, wherever that is, we definitely consider that, and then probably will have to at some point for sure.
Yeah, probably should have asked this earlier, but what is the employment base of Marquette? Like, are there a few big employers there, or like, is it the kind of thing where if one of them went under, like the whole town is done? Like, how does that work up there?
Great question, because that's probably the most critical part of us continuing to invest there. We feel like there's stability. There is a diversified economy there. There's the lumber industry. There's the mining industry that's very strong. The two largest employers would be the hospital system, which is a large hospital for the Upper Peninsula. And then a university, so they've got a large university there as well.
Is that Michigan Tech? Or no, it's not Michigan Tech.
Northern Michigan.
Oh, gotcha.
Michigan Tech's up in the Houghton area.
That's right. That's right. Cool.
But also, there's, in today's day and age, especially when COVID happened, there's so many more jobs remotely.
Yeah,
and so the amount of calls that we get from either out of state or from downstate here, people looking to move up, we've heard it so many times that we can't even probably remember, but I'm just trying to get out of the hustle and bustle. I want something a little quieter. I can work remotely. And so I think a lot of people are moving up there to that area, just being, it's right on Lake Superior, it's an awesome town. And, but housing is expensive in there. So being a little outside town, it's only a, 20-minute drive, to the lake, to the big lake. And, so it's really a beautiful spot and for someone to move in.
Yeah. Is that, is the cost of living more to live up there or less compared to the Lower Peninsula? Like, is gas, food, groceries, and that stuff?
Yeah, it's comparable, I would say. It just depends on the area of the Lower Peninsula. I'd say it probably resembles much more closely the northern Lower Peninsula in terms of, say, your pricing on just product and services. It's going to be a little bit less than a Grand Rapids or a Metro Detroit for sure.
Yeah, sure.
But pretty similar to a lot of these local smaller communities in the Lower Peninsula.
Is there like Chick-fil-A up there?
There isn't.
Why would anybody live up there?
Right, no doubt. Sounds like an opportunity.
Yes,
it does.
Suppose somebody out there is listening to this and they've got nothing. They don't own any properties, but they kind of see what you've accomplished, or just this idea of using real estate to quit their job and do what they want in life. I don't know, is there any just general principles or suggestions or ideas or anything that you would say to those people?
Yeah, I think bigger sooner, honestly, and I've heard it a ton of times, and I wish I would have taken that advice early on, because it is so achievable, and I don't want to make it sound simplistic or easy, but if you take the actionable steps, if you take make sure that you give a call and you make sure you do your due diligence, you kind of break those into small, simple tasks, it is totally achievable to be where we're at in probably the same amount of time or less time. So, think bigger sooner. I think I'm not exactly sure who said that, if it was Brandon Turner himself, or I'm not exactly sure, but that's where the advice I'd give any newbie starting out.
Okay, cool, awesome. So the final three questions. At the end of a lot of our podcasts, in this case, will ask three questions. Just has nothing to do with real estate. It's just to get to know you guys better. The first question, I guess, Caleb, we'll start with you, is what is your biggest fear?
Man, I think my biggest fear is failure, honestly. And so I think it's what drives me, and good or bad. Very competitive person, and I think it just motivates me to, I don't say win, but succeed, and whatever it takes. If it's going to be grinding, working longer hours, doing what it takes not to fail what I'm doing. Yeah.
What does failure look like to you? Like, is that like losing money? Is it like having to go back to a job? I don't know.
I would say in a way, having something that, I think a lot of people struggle with what's their calling. And so for me, having something that I feel called, doing something that I feel that I've been successful and succeeded, and that doesn't necessarily mean money at all. No, neither of us got into this for the money. It's more, can we make an impact in the community? Can we use this to spread, even the gospel in some way? Or be a positive light in someone's life. Yeah. And so, no, definitely not money, but something that we feel that we're making an impact in more than just our immediate lives and the community around us.
Yeah, cool, awesome. What about you, Kyle? What's your biggest fear?
Yeah, I would probably say it's very similar, parallels what Caleb said, that I don't want to have a regret at the end that I didn't live a fulfilled life, that I wasn't able to do everything that I was set out and called to do, and whether that's impact as many people. And it probably won't just be housing. We talk about this endlessly, that I'd love to start a kids foundation or start a child foundation, and see how many people we can impact. So to not fulfill that potential, I think would be my biggest fear.
Yeah. In terms of like impacting people through just the properties that you guys are buying or renovating? What does impact mean? Just kind of giving them a better place to live? Is that the idea, or anything else beyond that? Or
Yeah, I think the easiest way is to be firm, be fair, and remain consistent in everything. And Caleb alluded to this in what we do. Everything is brand new. We're able to charge, because we're doing it ourselves, we're able to charge 60-70% of market rent on something that's brand new.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, and myself included, this is nicer than what I'm living in currently, right? And maybe that's just because I'm frugal, and maybe my wife might say a little cheap. But the reality is for someone to walk in there, a lot of times the first thing they say is, "Wow, like man, look at this," and so that's something special.
So, Caleb, with you again. So, what is something you're most proud of?
So I can't say it's what I'm most proud of right now, but hopefully in the future, is raising a family and having an impact on kids and teaching my kids possibilities that they can have, and whether it's real estate or whatever they want to do. And then hopefully be able to get involved and coach them somewhat. We both love basketball and we've done some coaching in the past. I'd say that, and be able to create a place where my wife doesn't have to go back to work, can stay at home and raise the kids and live somewhat of a time-free lifestyle.
Cool. What about you, Kyle? What are you most proud of?
Yeah, I think at this point it's probably that we've created a team and created a destiny on our own, off our own sweat equity, to be able to work alongside one of my best friends and work alongside my wife. Was able to step out of a corporate job and really be able to raise our kid as we see fit and have that opportunity. So I think that's probably what I'm most proud of at the moment.
What is the most important lesson you've ever learned, Caleb?
Man, so I would say I once had a former boss that mentioned this, one of the owners I used to work for. He said, "The harder you work, the luckier you get."
Yeah.
And basically saying that, I mean, people from the outside see, like, they might see what we've done in a year and say, "Wow, like how they do that." They don't see everything we did. They don't see us climbing under a mobile home, fixing a sewer line. They don't see us at 8, 9 o'clock at night still laying flooring, Yeah. And so, I mean, I think there's a lot to be said with that. There's no really luck involved, I wouldn't say. I'm not a really believer in luck necessarily, but that you kind of do make your own destiny or can, and by perseverance and hard work, you can get there.
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. What about you?
I think probably being a team guy and having played sports my whole life and having a mentor that ingrained this in me. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And I believe it so firmly at this point that this partnership and this, over the last year has been the best thing that we could have done from an overall happiness. And so that's probably my most important lesson. If I could share that.
Yeah. Awesome. I should have asked this earlier, but just, when you think of everything you guys have done over the past year or so does anything stand out as like just a horrific story or anything that you had to endure, like dealing with a tenant or discovering something nasty in the property? Or has anything just been like, wow, that was horrible? Anything stand out?
We've dealt with it all. We've unclogged, obviously toilets, the sinks, we walked into apartments that we had to fill a 40-yard dumpster up. Yeah. Probably one of us is a Sunday morning. It was the coldest day up there, like in February, wasn't it? And we got a call on Sunday morning. I was getting ready to go to church and got a call that we had a lake of water in the mobile home park, and we had a water main break, and we had probably 2-3 feet of water in there. Just spewing out of a full main,
right on the city street. So flooded the city street on February 13th or 14th.
Yep. It was negative, negative 20 that day.
Yeah, about negative 20.
So that's what caused it to break.
We think
old
infrastructure.
The break was probably there, and it pushed the frost line deep enough that finally caused a little larger rupture, and finally went up instead of down.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, who fixed that? Did you have to fix that?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did. When we say DIY, we really mean it, and not that we had to, but we wanted to learn exactly what it was going to take. The first call was an emergency call. Basically, like, how do we shut this off? And because we're hooked to a city, water, sewer. Second call was to one of the gentlemen that works for us. My dad is one of the employees, great waterworks guy and plumbing and electrician. So that was the second call, and then we jumped on and we started pushing 2.5 feet of water into a sewer system, back into the city sewer. I think then after that, it was a call to the foreman of one of the large excavating crews that had gotten to meet through my past work. It was a Sunday morning at probably 10 o'clock.
Yeah, 9 o'clock. Yeah.
And he answered the phone and he said, very sincerely, he said, I'll see if I can round up the troops and we'll be there in, as quick as we can. And them guys had plowed all night too. We actually got a snowstorm the night before. And so he called back shortly and he said, man, I can't pull it off today. It's going to have to be tomorrow morning. And from there, so it actually worsened for a while. And anybody that knows mobile home parks, we had to shut the water off. So the pipes instantly freeze. Within 15 to 30 minutes, we had 5 freeze-ups on that one stretch of street that we had to shut off.
You mean like the pipes in the people's homes froze up?
Yeah, unfortunately. So we spent all of Sunday, coldest day of the year, all of Monday, digging that hole and replacing that water main. I think it was a 12-foot piece we ended up replacing.
Were you up there when this happened?
I wasn't. No, I was actually downstate here, and so I didn't go up. I got out
So
that
you're
one
like,
somehow.
oh, God, that's too bad.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, so I was willing to make the drive if I had to.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of those things where, if I could have made an impact, but at this point, I mean, it wouldn't have been helpful.
Yeah, man.
Especially with road conditions and everything else.
Yeah.
It's one of those moments where you're like, man, I would rather you be safe, stay down there, and we're going to get this. And I knew it probably hurt him worse to be home than it would have to, than to be there and work. So
Was that like super expensive then?
Not really. It
Seems
really
like it would be, but
it really wasn't. So the water bill was right. Obviously, as you're running city water in the ground at I think it was like 15,000 gallons a day there for a couple days.
Oh man,
that bill was a little bit expensive, but the excavating work was not too bad. I think it ran us $4,000 or $5,000 total to repair that, and you just chalk it up as a cost of doing business, essentially. It's just part of the CapEx. So
did you basically just have to put the line deeper so that it wouldn't do that again? Or
well, it's at 6.5 feet, so it's below frost line, and the way it's the infrastructure is actually done extremely well. It's probably deeper than we would have even done it if it were up to code now. So we buried it at the same depth, and what we expect is that there was a crack in that pipe that worsened over 30, 40 years. And so it hit a tipping point. It happened to be 1 month or 2 months after purchase. And that's where having a cash reserve and having some flexibility. But, so we did the same. We put it right back in the same spot. They did an awesome job. It was in and out in probably, I'd say like 8 hours, 10 hours of digging.
Crazy. Well, again, if you guys want to learn anything more about Caleb and Kyle, what they got going on, they've got an Instagram page. What's it called again?
Yeah, Fixer Youpers. So instead of Fixer Upper after Chip and Joanna, we're Fixer Youpers instead.
Is that Y-O-U? How do you spell that?
Yeah, so Youpers just being the term, the slang term of the Upper Peninsula is Y-O-O-P-E-R-S. Yeah,
this is a thing that only we Michigan people know. So outside here. And again, I'll link to that in the show notes, retipster.com/108. And thanks again, guys, for sitting down. It was really cool to hear more of your story, and hope you guys at home enjoyed it as well. Thanks for listening.